Now, a new book sets out to examine the history between the British and the Sikhs. Leicestershire historian Gurinder Mann has travelled back and forth to India to explore the relationship between the two groups, which dates back as far as the 18th century. He joins us on the line. Gurinder, good to talk to you again.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
Yeah, really good. Look, talk to me about this book, The British and the Sikhs. What were you exploring?
I think the key thing was that I've been working in Sikh history and heritage for over 20 years. And what I wanted to do was to actually kind of, not just to actually allude to some of the research I'd done, but actually look further, go to India and also look at archives in the UK as well, to actually package and kind of sum up what the kind of distinct relationship was between circa 1700 period going all the way up to 1900 essentially.
No. So, one of the things that you and I have spoken about before are the questions, and it was a controversy about it. I think it was either earlier on this year or late last, about Sikhs in the British Indian Army, and as we know, it was not unusual.
Absolutely, and books like this actually go about to dispelling those kind of myths that some people actually have as well. So what I've actually tried to do is to not just to talk about Sikhs in World War I and World War II because it cut off points at 1900, but to actually talk about how the Sikhs were recruited as part of the British Indian Army, but then to go deeper back to the 18th century and show that Governor Generals like, the Clive of India, Warren Hastings, knew exactly who the Sikhs were back, at a time period earlier than that. So it just shows this relationship is very rich and does go back further than most people probably imagine, essentially.
I mean, we're obviously talking at a time of empire. Was there respect? Did it come in both directions?
Absolutely. I think what happened was, I think there's three phases, and hence why I've called it discovery, warfare, and friendship. So, you've got a discovery phase where each side is eyeing up each other in terms of military strength. During the Sikh Empire period, for instance, there's a lot of kind of documents which are flowing from both camps essentially as well. Obviously, there was warfare during the Anglo-Sikh Wars, but then I think this friendship did actually formalised essentially during the British Raj period, where numerous members of the Sikh community were actually recruited for campaigns all across the world, essentially.
Why?
I think it was this idea that after annexation of the Punjab, that, there was this idea of actually looking for jobs. So that was one idea. The British Indian Army did actually provide a great area for people to actually, expand and get roles. There was also language skills that actually learned English and also were able to provide for their families. So I think there was a combination of different ideas why there was this expansion from Sikhs becoming, say, foe to friend, essentially, as part of the British Indian Army.
Look, I think it's a remarkable book that you've written. Were the things that surprised you?
Absolutely. And I think, there was a lot of areas which I'd already packaged from some years ago to actually, like I said, formulate this book. But then going back, it's like, I think there's a plethora of information out there which is still untapped, which actually does show, because the East India Company did actually keep lots and lots of records, as we're already aware, but actually tapping into them brought about a lot of kind of instances, and hence why my cover depicts the Sikh conquest of Delhi, but with the British being very, very intrigued. This is going back to 1783 and thinking, this is interesting. So, it is all these interests that were taking place, say, maybe 200 years ago, is still, fascinating people to this very day.
Was that sort of fascination, that mutual respect, was that because of the sort of military side of things, or was it wider than that?
Absolutely, and that's another great question, because essentially, whilst the book is primarily based on looking at military kind of relationship, there is also ideas of travellers going in and actually seeing Sikh places of worship as well. So I've mentioned John Wilkins, who actually goes into a Sikh Gurdwara, for instance, in the 18th century, and he talks about the practices, for instance, and it's things like that, and also about translations of the Sikh texts as well. So I think there was a deeper kind of fascination in terms of not just about the military aspect, but what the actual Sikh faith actually consists of and what its actual benefits were. Because I think if you look at it from a Christian perspective, they were actually looking at it from the point of what's the similarities between both religions and what they could do in terms of actually possibly converting Sikhs to Christianity as well.
And how far did this sort of knowledge of each other go? I mean, was it just sort of high-ranking military people, professionals, and that sort of thing? Who was sort of interested in it?
I think you're right. I think firstly there was this the military aspect of the East India Company, who were very, very interested. Then, as the actual kind of relationship developed, for instance, we had a lot of illustrators, we had a lot of writers, we had people who write poems about the Sikhs, for instance, and that developed a lot later, probably from the 1800 period onwards. But it was as the more and more Britishers, so to speak, went out to India. That's what captured their imagination about the Sikhs, and as a result, there was a lot of information which was kind of put in tracts, papers, periodicals, and books as well.
Gurinder, great to have you on the show. Thank you so much. How are you keeping?
I'm keeping okay under the circumstances. To have things like a book coming out is very, very special as well.
Yeah.
Didn't think it was going to happen, but it's happened, and it hopefully gives a chance for people to occupy themselves during this very difficult period.
If people would like it, it's got great illustrations in it, photographs which are just so redolent of an era. How do people get hold of it?
Okay, so the best place to access the book is from Hellion and Company, and the website is www.hellion.co.uk.
Excellent stuff. Gurinder, thanks. Keep well and speak soon.
That's great. Thank you. Bye.
It's an absolutely fascinating read. It's just I love it. I love when historians sort of go into just laser beam into a particular area of history. It's fascinating.